A little girl grabbing a stranger's hand in the snow, whispering words that could melt the coldest heart. Get ready for a tale of broken folks finding home in the Wild West. She tried to leave quietly, but the little girl held her hand. Please, don't let us be alone again. Nevada Territory, winter, 1880, 9:37 p.m. The wind howled through the empty train station, dragging snow like ghost white fingers across the wooden floor. The platform lanterns had long since burned out. The silence was sharp, broken only by the distant groan of frozen timber shifting in the cold. Mara Jennings sat in the farthest corner of the depot, tucked behind an empty freight crate. She wrapped her arms tightly around her knees, trembling in her dirt-stained dress. Her boots were soaked through. Mud clung to the hem of her skirt. Her fingers gripped a fraying cloth sack that contained all she had left in the world. 3 coins, a bonnet, and a letter now nearly unreadable. She closed her eyes and leaned her head against the wall, willing the cold away. Her breath came in short, uneven clouds. Footsteps approached, slow, deliberate. A shadow fell across her. Hey! The voice was sharp, suspicious. You there? Mara flinched as she looked up into the face of a man in a station uniform, mid-50s, jowled and red-faced from the cold. His breath reeked of whiskey. He narrowed his eyes. What are you doing here? Hiding like a stray mutt. I'm sorry, she said, voice barely above a whisper. I was just trying to stay warm. This ain't no shelter, he snapped. Last train left an hour ago. Next one don't come till morning. I know, she said. I just needed somewhere to sit just until... He cut her off with a sneer. You one of those mail-order girls, a bride run off or dumped before the wedding? Mara swallowed hard. I was supposed to meet someone, a man. He wrote me letters. The station man laughed cruelly. And I suppose he forgot what day it was. Sure, he didn't get a look at you and change his mind. Her face flushed, more from shame than anger, but she didn't look away. I came from Kentucky. I left everything behind because I thought this would be a new start. Yeah, and now you're squatting in my depot with nothing but lies and rags. He stepped closer. We don't keep girls like you around. You either buy a ticket or get gone. Ain't a whorehouse here for miles, so don't get any ideas. Mara's voice broke. I'm not that kind of woman. Could have fooled me? She stood up shakily, fists clenched around her bag. Her pride, though tattered, still held. I'm not asking for charity. I just need a place to wait until morning. And I need a day without strays in my station, he said. Get out now. She held his gaze for a heartbeat longer, then lowered her eyes. Slowly, She walked past him through the station door and into the storm. Outside, The wind cut like blades. The sky was pitch black. Snowflakes stung her cheeks as she stepped off the platform and into the night. Her boots crunched against hard-packed ice. Her limbs felt hollow. The town of Creswell was no more than 20 buildings, and at this hour, they were all shuttered tight. The saloon lights were dark, the church bell silent. She passed the blacksmith's forge, empty, the boarding house locked. No porch light, no welcome, no place. Her lips had gone numb. She paused at a corner where the wind ripped harder, nearly knocking her off balance. She steadied herself against a fence post. For a long moment, she stood there with her head bowed, hair plastered to her cheeks with snow and sweat. She pulled the letter from her bag. The ink had bled, but she could still make out the name. Allen R. Silverbend, Nevada. She ran her fingers over the words, whispering the name like it might summon him, but the page gave no answer. He is not coming. He was never coming. The The truth settled over her shoulders, heavier than the snowfall. She tucked the letter away, turned her back to the town, and began walking. One step, then another. The farther she went, the quieter the wind felt. No wolves, no howls, just the lonely groan of trees against the plain. After a while, she noticed something ahead, far beyond the town's edge, a flicker, a pinprick of yellow in a sea of gray. It was a light, a lantern, maybe. Her breath caught. Could be a trap, a drunk, a killer, or worse. But the snow was sinking through her soles now, soaking her to the skin. Her knees buckled with each step. She did not care anymore. She pressed on closer, closer. Her legs trembled beneath her. Her breath wheezed. She tasted blood in her throat. The light swayed slowly behind a curtain of smoke or frost. Not a saloon, not a shack, a home. She stopped at the edge of a split-rail fence, barely able to stand. The lantern light grew steady. Warmth. Shelter. Mara stared through the snow and knew this was her only chance. She reached the gate with stiff fingers, lifted the latch, and stepped inside. And somewhere beyond the dark, behind the yellow glow of that lantern, someone was watching. The lantern light flickered through a foggy pane as wind clawed at the house. A dog barked sharply outside. Then again, inside. A shadow moved. Alan Reed stood from his chair by the hearth, slow and stiff. His shirt was unbuttoned at the collar, suspenders slack at his sides. He grabbed the rifle from behind the door and took up the oil lantern with his free hand. The barking grew louder as he stepped onto the creaking porch. Snow blew sideways across the yard. The fields beyond the barn were shrouded in darkness. He narrowed his eyes, scanning the broken fence line. Then he saw her, a figure just beyond the gate, barely upright, a woman alone, no horse, no wagon. She did not move, just stood there in the snow like a ghost. He raised. "The lantern! What do you want?" he called out. The woman stepped closer. Her dress was soaked, her skin deathly pale. She did not lift her hands. "I am not a thief," she said. Her voice cracked from cold and exhaustion. "I just need a place to stay one night. I'll leave at dawn." Alan didn't answer right away. He looked her up and down. Thin, dirty, not local. "You lost?" he asked bluntly. She shook her head. "I was supposed to be met at the station, but no one came. That's not my problem. I walked until I saw your light." He sighed through his nose, jaw clenched tight. This was the sort of trouble men warned each other about. Desperate girls with nothing left to lose. Inside the house, a small sound stirred. A soft thud. He turned slightly, glanced behind him. "Mara," she said, barely audible. "What?" "My name. It's Mara Jennings." Alan looked at her for a long time, saying nothing. Then he pointed toward the barn. "You can sleep in there. It's dry. Don't touch the horses. Don't come to the door." Mara nodded quickly. "Thank you. I won't be any trouble." He didn't respond. Just lowered the lantern slightly and backed toward the house. As he turned to go inside, a small figure appeared beside the door. Bare feet, tangled hair, a wool blanket clutched in her hand. A little girl, no older than 3. She pressed herself to the frame and peered out at the woman in the snow. "Back inside," Alan said softly. The girl didn't speak. She looked at Mara with wide, solemn eyes, like she was trying to remember something she had forgotten. "Becca," he said more firmly. She didn't move. Mara noticed the child and offered a faint, tired smile. The girl blinked but said nothing. Alan stepped between them. shielding his daughter from the wind. Then he scooped her into his arm and carried her back inside. The door closed behind them. Mara stood still for another moment. Her body ached to collapse, but her pride kept her upright. She turned toward the barn. The door creaked as she pushed it open. The smell of hay and wood and old leather drifted out. The warmth of animals lingered in the air. Inside, a single stall was empty. She curled up in the hay, arms wrapped around her sack, and tried to quiet the shaking in her bones. Outside, the wind howled on, and in the house not far away, a little girl sat beside the window, staring out into the night. Morning came with a dull gray light and the soft crackle of melting frost. A rooster crowed in the distance. The world was still cold, but the wind had quieted. Mara stirred in the hay, blinking slowly. Her body ached from the wooden floor beneath her, but she had slept, truly slept, for the first time in days. Her breath came slower now, calmer. She sat up and gathered her things. She dusted off the few pieces of straw that clung to her skirt and pulled her shawl tight around her shoulders. Her fingers were stiff as she reached into her bag and tore a corner from an old envelope. She smoothed it over her knee and wrote with a broken bit of charcoal she found near the trough. "I didn't take anything. Thank you for the shelter. She folded the note once and placed it carefully on a small stack of split firewood beside the barn door. Then, without looking back, she started toward the gate. Her boots crunched softly against the frost-hardened earth. The morning sun had not yet burned through the clouds. A soft mist clung to the ground. Her breath fogged the air. She didn't make it 10 steps before she heard the sound. The light, quick patter of bare feet against the dirt. She turned slowly. Becca stood a few paces behind her, breathless, her small fists clenched at her sides. Her hair was a tangled mess of curls. Her nightdress slightly too short for her legs. Her eyes, wide and dark, were fixed on Mara like a lifeline. Then, without warning, she ran forward. Mara barely had time to react before the child grabbed her hand with both of hers, gripping it tightly, desperately. The girl's voice came out in a whisper, broken, but sharp enough to crack through the silence like thunder. "Please don't let us be alone again." Mara's breath caught in her throat. She stared down at the child, frozen, as though the world had stopped. Becca. Quote's hands trembled around hers. Her eyes shimmered. Her small shoulders rose and fell with quick, shallow breaths. From behind them, a low voice broke the stillness. "She spoke to you?" Mara turned slowly. Allen stood by the porch, half-dressed, hair mussed, boots unlaced. A half-eaten apple was forgotten in his hand. His eyes weren't on her. They were locked on his daughter, who still clung to Mara like she was something fragile that might disappear. "She never talks," he said almost to himself. "Not since." He stopped. Mara knelt down slowly, still holding the girl's hand. She looked at Becca, really looked at her, then brushed a curl behind the child's ear. "I didn't do anything," she said gently, not taking her eyes off the child. "I just didn't ask her if she was broken." Becca sniffled and leaned her head into Mara's side. The gesture was soft, trusting, full of need. Allen stepped forward a little, clearly uncertain. He looked at Mara, really looked this time, not with suspicion, not with frustration, but with confusion, with something like fear or hope. He let out a slow breath. "Stay," he said, voice low. "A few more days until the weather clears." Mara looked up at him, surprised. "I can work," she said quickly. "Around the house. I can earn my keep." Allen shook his head once. "I don't want help." He paused, eyes flicking briefly to his daughter. But she might. Mara nodded, still kneeling, Becca's small arms wrapped around her. Just until the rain stops, she whispered. Allen turned without another word and walked back toward the house, boots crunching softly against the earth. Becca didn't let go. Not for a long time. The days passed slowly. Softened by routine, Mara rose with the sun and swept the front yard each morning, her movements quiet and deliberate. Dust and dead leaves were no match for her care. She cleaned the porch, tended the chickens, and peeled potatoes with sleeves. Rolled to her elbows. She never asked where anything was, just found it. Allen rarely spoke. He would nod at her now and then, sometimes grunt an answer, but mostly he worked in the fields repairing fence posts. Cutting wood, always watching from the corner of his eye, and Becca, once silent as snowfall, began to hum. The first time Mara heard it, she froze. It came from the corner where the little girl sat cross-legged with a needle and a scrap of old muslin. A melody. Faint, sweet, familiar. Mara leaned closer. That's a lullaby. Becca looked up and nodded once Mara knelt beside her, gently guiding her small fingers through the stitches. You're doing fine, she whispered. Even if it's crooked, it's yours. The girl smiled, not wide, but real. That afternoon, they sat in the shade of the barn, and Mara sang the whole song aloud. Her voice was husky, uncertain at first, but Becca listened like she was memorizing each word. Allen passed by once, carrying a bundle of kindling, and paused just long enough to hear the final lines. He said nothing. But later that evening, when Mara stepped onto the porch, she saw something new. A swing. Wooden slats, carefully sanded, hung with rope from the support beam, not painted, not spoken of. She touched the seat and smiled to herself. The next day, Becca drew a picture in the dirt with a stick. A crude little triangle house with 3 stick figures standing side by side. Mara said nothing, just bent down and added a sun in the corner. That night, she found Allen sitting in his chair by the fire, shoulders hunched forward. Becca was already asleep upstairs. The fire crackled softly between them. Mara was about to retreat when she noticed something in his hand, a ring, worn, smooth. He turned it between his fingers slowly, like it might still hold some warmth. She didn't mean to speak, but the words slipped out. I quote, "Am sorry." Allen looked up. "I didn't mean to intrude," she added quickly. "I was just—" He waved her off with a slow shake of his head. Silence passed between them. It was not heavy, not sharp, just quiet. Then he said, low and distant. She died giving birth to Becca. Mara, quote, "S breath caught." She was strong, he continued, staring at the ring. Strongest person I knew. But it happened too fast. Too much blood. He didn't look at Mara as he spoke, just at the flame. Becca came into the world and everything else left it. Mara sat down on the edge of the hearth across from him. She didn't reach out, didn't offer sympathy, just sat. He seemed to appreciate that. She hasn't spoken since that day, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Until you. Mara swallowed hard. I didn't do anything, she said quietly. She just needed someone who wouldn't leave first. Allen turned the ring once more, then closed his fist around it. Or someone who listens, he said. They sat there, 2 people with too many scars and no right words. But something passed between them. Not spoken, not forced, just present. Mara stood first, brushing her hands against her skirt. I quote, "I'll start breakfast earlier tomorrow," she said softly. She likes the eggs with the runny middle. Allen nodded once. As she turned to go, she paused at the doorway and glanced back. He was still sitting there, staring into the fire, but the ring was no longer in his hand. It rested on the table beside him, still and quiet. The morning started like the others. The smell of coffee, the rhythm of chores, the quiet murmur of a home, slowly healing. Mara was in the kitchen peeling potatoes when a knock came at the front door. Allen opened it to find a courier in a worn hat, dust covered from the trail. "Got a letter here." "Quick seal," the man said, handing over the envelope for Miss Jennings. Allen turned, brow raised. "For you." Mara wiped her hands on her apron and stepped forward. Her heart began to pound before her fingers even touched the paper. The courier tipped his hat and left. She stared at the envelope for a moment. The handwriting was rough, male, familiar in a way that made her stomach twist. She opened it slowly. The words inside were short. The signature made her hands go cold. "Your father is dying. Come now if you want to see him before the end." She sat down without realizing. Allen stood nearby but said nothing. Becca peeked from behind the doorway, a drawing clutched in her hand. Mara, S eyes stayed on the letter, her lips pressed into a thin line. She had not heard that name. Her father's, in months, had prayed never to hear it again. The same man who had raised his hand more often than his voice. The same one who sold her future to a stranger for a few head of cattle and promised her obedience would keep her safe. But he was still her father. And now he was dying. She folded the letter and stood, slipping it into her apron. I need some air," she murmured. Outside, The sun was bright, but everything felt muted, distant. She sat on the edge of the porch, her hands gripping the wood so tightly her knuckles went white. Inside her chest, a war raged. She didn't owe him anything. Not kindness, not tears, not her presence. But still. Becca. S. Laughter drifted through the open window. Mara closed her eyes. That evening, she barely spoke. She helped Becca bathe, brushed out her curls, and tucked her in with gentle fingers. Becca hugged her without words. Mara lingered in the doorway, watching her breathe. Then she stepped back into the quiet of the kitchen and pulled her sack from under the stairs. She packed lightly. A shawl, her boots, a bit of bread wrapped in cloth. Last, she reached into the sewing drawer and pulled out the little square of fabric, white, soft, and neatly hemmed. It was the handkerchief she had embroidered weeks ago. Becca stitched carefully across the corner in blue thread. She walked upstairs one last time. The room was dim. Moonlight poured through the window, painting the girl's face in silver. Mara crossed the floor silently. She bent and placed the handkerchief on Becca's pillow. Then, without kissing her goodbye, she turned and left. The front door creaked softly as she stepped out into the cold. Dawn had not yet touched the horizon. She passed the swing Allen had built, past the fence she had mended, past the well where she had once laughed as Becca splashed her, and then she kept walking. Behind her. The house slept. Hours later, Becca awoke. She reached beside her, expecting warmth. There was none. Her small hand found the handkerchief instead. She held it close and rose, her bare feet padding across the wooden floor. She moved to the window, climbed onto the stool, and looked out toward the barn. The swing swayed slightly in the breeze, but there was no one there. She did not cry. Not loudly, just a quiet, broken sound from deep in her chest, like a bird's wing snapping mid-dash flight. She walked outside, sat on the porch where Mara always sipped her tea and waited and waited and waited. By the second day, Becca stopped eating. She curled into herself on the cot beside the fire, arms tucked under her chin, eyes glassy and far away. Her cheeks burned with fever. Her small breaths came fast and shallow. Allen knelt beside her, with a damp cloth, wiping her forehead again and again, whispering words that once meant something. "Come on now. Just a bit of broth. Just a sip." She did not answer He tried everything he knew. Cool water, herbal tea, placing a wet towel against her spine like his mother once did for him. Nothing worked. Becca only whispered one word over and over between shallow gasps. Mara. At first, he thought it was the fever talking, but then he heard it again, clearer, from deeper in her chest. Mara. The sound hollowed him out. He walked out onto the porch to breathe, gripping the railing so hard his knuckles went white. The wind cut sharp across his face. The swing moved slightly, its ropes creaking. He turned and went back inside. Quiet, heavy. In the corner of Becca's room was a small wooden crate where she kept her drawings. Allen had never paid them much mind. Childish scribbles mostly, but one page lay on top. Three stick figures hand in hand. One tall with wide shoulders, one small with curly hair, and in the middle a woman with long brown lines. For hair and a yellow sun drawn over her head, Allen sat on the bed and stared at it. Then he stood, slow and certain, and grabbed his coat. He saddled the horse without a word, lantern tied to the saddle horn. Snow fell lightly now, but he did not hesitate. 0 miles of trail stretched between the homestead and the town. He rode into the darkness. Anyway. The horse moved steady beneath him. Every breath of wind felt like it scraped bone. Trees blurred in his peripheral. Thoughts hammered through his head faster than hoofbeats. Why did I let her go? Why didn't I stop her? When he reached the depot, it was near dawn. He dismounted stiffly, legs aching, and pushed open the door of the waiting room. Inside, the bench beneath the frost-dusted window held a single figure. Mara sat alone, wrapped in her shawl. Her hair was wind-blown. Her dress still travel-worn. She looked up when she heard the door creak. Her face paled. "Allen," she breathed. He didn't say anything right away. His eyes, sharp and storming, met hers with a depth that made her rise slowly to her feet. "I was going to come back," she started, her voice. "I just needed time to. I'm not here to talk." "About you," he said, voice tight. "I quote him here because Becca is sick." Mara, quote, S breath caught. She won't eat, won't move, just lies there, keeps calling your name. He stepped forward once. "I tried everything I know, but I can't. I can't reach her. And I'm not. Enough. Not anymore. Mara, quote, S lip quivered. Her eyes brimmed with unshed tears. "If you still care," Allen's voice broke slightly, just enough to reveal what he was holding back, "then come home. Come save her." Mara nodded once without a word. Then she picked up her bag and followed him out into the cold. They arrived just before the sun broke the ridge. The house stood quiet, blanketed in soft gray light. Smoke curled faintly from the chimney, but no sound stirred within. Mara jumped from the horse before Allen had even dismounted. Her feet sank into the damp earth. As she ran up the porch steps and burst through the door. Inside, everything was still, then a cough, faint, dry. She rushed to the bedroom. Becca lay curled in a nest of blankets, skin pale as the pillow beneath her head. Her lips were cracked, her cheeks flushed deep red. Her small chest rose in shallow, strained rhythm. Mara knelt beside her, hands trembling as she brushed the sweat-soaked curls from the child's forehead. "It's me," she whispered. "It's Mara. I'm here." No response. She took the girl into her arms, slowly, gently, cradling her like something too fragile to bear weight. Becca. S body sagged into her as if it had been waiting for this moment. Mara held her tight and began to hum. The tune was shaky at first, caught between breaths, but she sang it anyway. The lullaby from weeks before. The one Becca had memorized in silence. Hush now, my baby. The prairie moon glows. Her voice cracked. Alan stood in the doorway watching. Close your eyes, little one, and dream where wind blows. Becca stirred. Mara paused, holding her breath. Then two small fingers curled around the edge of her shawl. The girl's lashes fluttered, and she blinked up at Mara with heavy, fever-lazed eyes. Her lips parted. Mama. The word barely left her mouth, but it shattered everything. Mara broke into quiet sobs, pressing her forehead against the girl. S. Her hands cupped Becca's cheeks, her tears mingling with the child's fever sweat. Alan stepped forward and knelt beside them, silent. His eyes were rimmed red, his jaw clenched to keep the emotion from spilling over. He placed a hand on Mara's shoulder. She didn't look at him, just leaned into it. They stayed that way for a long while. Later, when Becca was sleeping soundly against Mara's chest, Alan rose without a word and walked to the small drawer by the hearth. He opened it slowly, reached inside, and pulled out the ring. The gold had dulled with time. The engraving inside had nearly faded. He looked at it one last time, then closed his fist, and quietly, deliberately, he placed it into the drawer and shut it. When he turned around, Mara had shifted to the kitchen with Becca still nestled against her. He poured water into the kettle, lit the stove, and set out. 3 cups. Mara watched him from across the room. He poured the tea, not rushed, not ceremonious, just steady. Then he handed her a cup and placed another on the table beside the small stool. Becca stirred in Mara's arms. Still half asleep, and Alan sat down across from them. No promises, no declarations, just presence, just the quiet understanding between 3 people who had each been broken and stayed anyway. The first true spring morning came with golden light. Pouring through the window panes, it stretched across the wooden floor like a warm quilt, chasing away the shadows that had lingered too long in the corners of the house. Mara stood at the stove, humming softly as she stirred porridge in the pot. The scent of cinnamon and honey filled the kitchen. She glanced toward the porch where the front door stood slightly ajar, letting in the sweet scent of thawed earth and lilac. Outside, Becca sat cross-legged on a wool blanket with her crayons scattered around her like petals. A sheet of paper lay on her lap, already filled with color. Her tongue peeked out slightly. As she concentrated, brow furrowed in perfect seriousness, Alan leaned against the porch post nearby, arms crossed, eyes quiet and soft. "She hasn't looked up once," he murmured, nodding toward the girl. "She's working on something," Mara replied. A smile tugging at her lips, Alan gave a small grunt of acknowledgement, but his gaze stayed on Becca. There was a gentleness in his face that hadn't been there months ago. The hard lines were still carved by grief, but softer now, weathered instead of broken. "Finished!" Becca suddenly exclaimed, holding the drawing high above her head. Mara wiped her hands and stepped outside, Alan following behind her. Becca spread the paper carefully on the porch boards and looked up at them, proud and a little shy. 3. Stick figures stood hand in hand, a tall man in a hat, a small girl with curly hair, and a woman with a braid. Behind them, a little house with yellow windows. Above them, a sun beamed down with bold yellow rays. Mara knelt beside her. "You made the sun so bright," she said gently. Becca nodded. "Because it's always warm now." Alan lowered himself to his knees next to them, placing one large hand on his daughter's back. "She drew the light," he whispered almost to himself. Becca turned. To him, her face suddenly earnest. "Is she staying, Papa?" Alan didn't answer right away. Instead, he looked up at Mara, really looked, and something unspoken passed between them. Mara reached forward slowly and took his hand in hers. Their fingers intertwined, sure and steady. "I'm not going anywhere," she said. Becca leaned into them both, wrapping her arms around their joined hands as if trying to hold the moment in place. Mara bent to press a kiss to the crown of her curls. "No one's leaving," she whispered. "Not ever again." They stayed like that for a while, the three of them. No rush, no need to speak. Later inside, the rhythm of the house resumed like a song they all now knew the words to. Mara folded laundry while Alan fixed a loose cabinet hinge. Becca sat by the window drawing again, humming under her breath. The quiet was not empty. It was full of presence, of peace. That evening, as the sky faded into lavender, Alan opened small drawer by the hearth and took out the old gold band. He turned it in his fingers for a moment, then placed it gently into a box, closing it with reverence. He did not throw it away. He simply let it rest. Mara saw him, said nothing. She just brought him tea. When she sat beside him, he didn't speak either, but his hand reached for hers, the same way it had on the porch. Outside, the swing rocked in the breeze. Becca ran across the yard, chasing a butterfly. Laughter trailing behind her like ribbon. And from the house, warm yellow light spilled out the window, glowing across the steps like a welcome. It stayed lit long after sunset, and for the first time in a long time, no one was waiting for someone who would not come because they were already home together. Some stories do not end with gunfire or wedding bells, but with a quiet hand held in the morning light and the choice to stay. Mara did not ride off into the sunset. She stayed. She listened. And in doing so, she became a mother, not by blood, but by love. And Alan. He didn't need to fix her. He only needed to make space for healing, for hope, and for the kind of love that does not demand words. In the Wild West, where so much was lost to dust and silence, this little family found each other, and they never let go again. If this story moved you, if you believe in love that rises from broken places, then subscribe to Wild West Love Stories, because here we tell the tales history left behind. Where bullets missed, but hearts didn't. Subscribe, hit the bell icon, and join us for more unforgettable stories from the untamed heart of America.